So it's official. The very first trailer for Assassin's Creed Shadows was just released, and safe to say I'm pretty stoked. It is going to be a bit weird for me to not say Assassin's Creed Red after saying that for so many months, but Shadows is still a great name regardless. Now, the world premiere trailer looks as amazing as we all expected. I mean, when has an Assassin's Creed cinematic trailer not looked stunning? Now, just to give you a very quick rundown, this is the next big mainline Assassin's Creed game set in feudal Japan, and is hitting the shelves this November. What I want to do in this video is dive into this incredible trailer, break down some of the scenes and frames, and share my personal thoughts on what I've gathered, because there is some pretty neat stuff here to unpack. Now, just real quick before I get into it, why not consider subscribing if you want to stay up to date on everything Assassin's Creed? Anyway, without wasting any more time, let's get right into it. So right off the bat, to give context to the background of the game, Ubisoft gave me this information, and it reads, Japan 1579. The nation is on a brutal path towards unification under the iron will of daimyo Oda Nobunaga. Unrest is growing as new coalitions emerge and corrupt foreigners infiltrate the land. Following the violent invasion of the peaceful Iga province, a young shinobi sets out on a journey to fulfill an impossible promise, while a legendary samurai confronts the demons of his past and finds a new purpose. In Assassin's Creed Shadows, you will experience the intertwined stories of Naoe, a skilled shinobi assassin from Iga province, and Yasuke, the historical legend. From chaos to purpose, from darkness to light, a new creed rises over Japan. So yeah, based on that, it does sound pretty intense. Now let's get into the actual trailer. So this is a pretty lengthy world premiere, clocking in at around almost 4 minutes long, which is around a similar length to Valhalla's cinematic trailer. Now I'm going to go over the trailer as it plays and talk about each scene that seems of note. So right off the bat, the trailer kicks off with a very intense chase scene through a dark forest of some sort, and the pursuer appears to be a very mysterious figure in a hood. This is the first of 2 protagonists that we play as, being the shinobi Naoe. Now this is also the first look we get of her, and safe to say she does look pretty badass. We'll come back to the scene towards the end. The trailer then just transitions in smoke to a backstory of Naoe, and also her origins. We get a very nice glimpse of what appears to be the Iga province, which is Naoe's homeland. This is what is defined as the birthplace of the shinobi. Now this part reminded me a lot of Valhalla's cinematic trailer, especially at the start when all the Vikings are in Norway. We then see a scene showing a very serene lush forest with a stone pathway leading up to a Shinto shrine. Now here we get the first look at Naoe's actual face, but then again this is the CGI trailer, so do not expect these characters to look how they look here. Now the man beside her is in fact Fujibayashi Nagato, who is the father of Naoe. We can also assume he'll play a massive role in the story of the game, especially considering what happens quite soon in this trailer. Her father, Fujibayashi Nagato, provided her with combat training and sought to teach her the values of valor, wisdom and benevolence, which all came with varying levels of success. The scene then shifts to what appears to be smoke rising in the horizon. Now this is a real historical event where Oda Nobunaga and his armies marched an assault on the Iga province in 1581, which marks the final offensive of the Tensho Iga War. We finally get introduced to combat, and it's Naoe who showcases her swift fighting style, definitely drawing a lot of similarities to Xiao Jun in a way. However, she gets her ass absolutely handed to her, which seems to suggest that the trailer is hinting at her having a weaker side initially, but she will eventually develop her skills and become an exceptional fighter over time. We then witness the burning of her village, and here is where the trailer takes a turn. So the character on the right is in fact Yasuke, the second of 2 protagonists we play as. Now do note that the way these characters work in this game are not like in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, where we'll have a choice of choosing our character, but instead it's similar to Assassin's Creed Syndicate, where we'd play as both Jacob and Evie, of course alternating over the narrative. It certainly seems to be the case that Yasuke and Naoe start off as enemies in the game, but given Yasuke's arrival and his alliance with Nobunaga, where he's aiding in the destruction of the Iga province, it seems likely that he would be in conflict with the assassins from the very beginning. It is quite evident that both protagonists will have differing missions to create tension over time in the narrative. How we'll switch between Naoe and Yasuke is still unknown, but it is safe to assume that each character will have a distinct skill tree and also unique abilities to unlock. The trailer then shifts to Sakai, which is a massive port in Japan, and here we can see 2 large sailing ships anchored. Now the masts on the ships indicate that these could be European, given the historical context of trade in Japan during the late 16th century, and a relatively educated guess can be made that these are in fact Portuguese ships. Now here we get the first look at Yasuke outside of combat, and in real history he was under the employ of Nobunaga, who is in fact this man right here, the great unifier of Japan. Now a pretty noteworthy thing to know is that historically Yasuke was by Oda Nobunaga's side at his death, so the fact that Naoe and Yasuke come together to form an alliance might suggest that Yasuke could be responsible for the death of Nobunaga in Assassin's Creed Shadows. Of course that's just speculation, but it could be likely, especially considering that Yasuke at the start of the trailer was seen with Nobunaga's troops that marched on Iga province. Another thing to note about Oda Nobunaga here is that he had very strong trade relationships with the Portuguese. Now here the trailer shifts to what is definitely the arrival of the troops in Japan. This also featured Yasuke's arrival too. Now although his actual story arriving in Japan is clouded in history, the most common stories suggest that he arrived a couple of years before this sequence and very quickly became fluent in Japanese, gaining a deeper understanding of the culture. We then get the first look at Yasuke's actual combat, and oh boy is he a brute. He's simply tearing down every enemy in front of him with ease. Now an interesting thing to note here is the helmet that Yasuke is wearing, which is in fact a horned helmet which served to identify military commanders on the battlefield and symbolize the warrior's bravery, and it's definitely the case with Yasuke. Here we get a very powerful speech by Naoe intended for Yasuke, urging him to either continue on his current path or choose a different one.
Will you continue down that river or choose another path beyond what we see?
This scene seems to depict the moment when both protagonists unite and work together for the first time. Now I love how the depiction of both characters are so different. Naoe is intense, passionate and determined, while Yasuke is more thoughtful, level-headed and respectful of the Japanese culture. It's also clear that the locals here view Yasuke differently, which is expected, as this is the first black quote-unquote samurai in history. I say quote-unquote because he was just a retainer, but the way I can see Assassin's Creed Shadows do it is portraying him as a samurai. Now I want to point out this is where the trailer clearly wants us to focus on Naoe's hidden blade, and instantly this is definitely not a regular hidden blade, and it appears to look like a pivot blade, which finally makes a return to the franchise since Assassin's Creed 3, if I'm not mistaken, which was well over 10 years ago, so that would be exciting to try out, especially with Naoe's playstyle being more agility focused. Here the trailer shifts to what appears to be Naoe and Yasuke's attack on what I would like to assume is Takeda Castle, which was the final stages of the Azuchi Momoyama period. We get introduced to the first look at Naoe's grappling hook, which of course we know will be a feature based on the leaks previously mentioned. Now this grapple hook, according to Ubisoft, is a new tool very useful for stealth. It allows her to climb over walls that you cannot climb with Yasuke or without the hook. It offers different paths for Naoe when finding hook points in the game. And lastly, the grapple hook allows her to travel much faster in the open world, and I'm all for it. We also get a look at Naoe's combat, but this time it's massively improved. I mean, compare this scene to the start of the cinematic trailer where she gets brushed aside quite easily. Her combat here is so much more swift and agile. She even has what appears to be shurikens, which is a signature samurai weapon. Of course, we cannot forget about the hidden blade here, as we are indeed back to a time period where assassins finally return. Now we also see Yasuke's introduction to combat, and oh boy is he a beast. Pay attention to how he tosses enemies through walls, because Assassin's Creed Shadows will in fact feature destructible props and a dynamic world, allowing for us to break through doors and whatnot. Oh yeah, and you're also able to assassinate enemies through them too. Now Yasuke here is wielding what appears to be a kanabo, which is a two-handed mace-like weapon with spikes. So it's safe to say his combat style is much more in your face and tanky. An important thing to note here is that he's not wielding a hidden blade during this scene, so maybe he doesn't join the assassins and is similar to Eivor, turning out to be just an ally. Now finally the trailer shifts back to what we saw at the start, but this time with more context. Naoe and Yasuke chase a fleeing man away from the castle into a forest. You know, one thing I gotta say here is Yasuke is so goddamn tall, unless that other guy is very short. Yasuke's towering presence is definitely impressive, and it will be interesting to see this in game. Of course, it would not be an Assassin's Creed game without some form of Ezio's family soundtrack playing in the background, and this one sounds just as good. Now here we see how quick Naoe really is, because goddamn that seemed a bit too fast. Of course, ending with what appears to be a pivot blade being used, but more specifically, the weapon that Naoe extrudes is in fact called a tanto, which in Japanese history was used in martial arts, which fits her style of combat perfectly. And after that, the trailer ends with finally a release date, and a confirmed one, which is in fact November 15, 2024. So thank God it's not next year, because there was rumors that it was going to be pushed back to that year. So yeah, that's the official world premiere trailer. What do you guys think about this trailer? I for one absolutely love it, and I'm pretty sure on June 10th we'll see gameplay revealed at Ubisoft Forward, so that's something to look forward to. You know, I can't wait for this next saga of Assassin's Creed, and I hope you guys are too. Anyway, if you did enjoy this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and with that said, I'll see you in the next one.